At 15, I started going to the gym, and when I did that, I quickly developed a bunch of problems. From the bench press, I got a bunch of shoulder pain. Cracking shoulders, I got a shoulder impingement, which I later healed, but that took a long while. From deadlifts, I got lower back pain. From squats, I got lower back pain. And I was tricked into doing these movements because I thought that exercise and these big three movements was the same thing. That if you go to the gym, you're supposed to do these, and it's a bad thing to not do them. These are important exercises and you need to be strong in them. As I continued doing these movements, I got worse. I remember when I used to go to sleep, my lower back would hurt, especially after deadlifts, so I used to put a pillow below my butt and then I could sleep because it wouldn't hurt then. And I didn't really realize that, oh, I could just stop deadlifting and I wouldn't have this problem. And I wouldn't be losing out on anything, except for a certain number in my head that I could present to other people. And I did gain some muscles, and I did gain some strength, and I was very happy with that. But was it worth messing up your shoulders and wrists and knees and hips and ankles and neck and spine? No, absolutely not. It wasn't. And I don't want this to happen with anyone, and that's why I'm making this video. You see, even if you do everything perfectly from a health perspective, if you avoid pollution, you live out in nature, and you eat perfectly, and you're in the sun, and you're completely grounded all the time, and your mental health is great. If you, for some reason, really like lifting stones in a bad manner, so you're deadlifting them but with a rounded back, and you find that fun, you're going to mess up your spine. Everything in modern society is very subverted. We don't know what to eat, we don't know how to live, we think that we need to go to school and then go to university, and then we need to work all our lives and then we need to retire. It's as if this system is ingrained into our heads. Imagine if there were no weeks, no hours, no clocks, no smartphones. Imagine if you were a human being who lived in nature, because that's how it is to live in nature. There are no economic obligations, there are no politics, there are no clocks. There are no weeks, no weekdays, no months, no years. There's freedom. You see, you're very psychologically affected by all these things, and that's why you're psychologically affected by exercise. Just imagine that this entire system that we have around the gym and exercise in general is completely faulty and unnatural. You have to realize that a lion, a tiger, a horse, a hippo, a giraffe, a fish, a whale, a shark, they don't exercise. They move in accordance with their environment and their capabilities and what they need to do to survive. Humans have done the exact same thing as long as they were in nature. When they aren't in nature, when they build societies and they start caring about other things and they start dividing up the earth as if they can own the land, as if you can possess anything, that is when we get people who need to invent exercise to move. Okay, so what is this lost art of movement? What am I talking about? Well, it's very easy. Just look at nature. Look at people living in nature. Look at the Maasai, look at the Inuit, look at any primitive tribe really, and look at what they do. And what you'll realize is they gather food and they defend themselves. And they move to the places where they need to. That's it. So we walk a lot. We really like walking. We swim when we need to swim. We climb when we need to climb. We carry stuff when we need to carry stuff. We do everything we need to do to survive, to defend ourselves, to fight, hopefully not each other but other animals, to kill other animals, to carry them back. And our bodies are self-evidently built for that. That's what they're built for. They're not built for anything else. A lion's jaw is built to bite into a zebra. Our jaws are not for that because we've used spears and we've been very effective at using spears for many thousands of years. And you might think, where's the evidence? Well, the evidence is in Weston A. Price's book, Nutrition and Physical Degeneration. He literally documents a bunch of native, isolated, primitive tribes that live in nature. So you know how we observe a lion and we know that that's what a lion does in nature? You can do the same thing with human beings to figure out what you're supposed to do with your life. That's actually how you were designed to live. The people that he writes about in his book are the best examples of human beings you can find today, because quite frankly, there are no books like his book. The people Weston A. Price praised the most in his book are the Australian Aborigines, and he says that they have a very harsh environment, yet they're very, very good at surviving and acquiring food, and they have extremely good knowledge of the plant kingdom and also the animal kingdom. They're amazing hunters, and they know how to hunt everything, and they're very accurate with spears. They jump really high, they're very fast, they're good climbers. But don't primitive people have shorter life expectancies? Isn't the exercise we do in modern society then better and superior to the movement forms we see in nature? Well, the fact that primitive people have shorter life expectancies, that's not a fact, that's a lie. And the only way for me to convince you is if you were to read that book. You have to read that book to understand what it is that Weston A. Price found. Because the entire book is a study on whether primitive people are healthier than people in modern society or not. He was trying to understand why people in modern society were degenerating. And what we found is that independent of how you look, independent of your race, if you lived in nature, in our natural habitat, you ate our natural foods, you got sunlight, you got movement, and you didn't do the stupid things that people in modern society do, you don't degenerate. He found that these people didn't have any disease. I usually reference this book for people who are trying to understand what the truth behind nutrition is and how subverted our nutrition recommendations in modern society are. But I can also recommend it, I realized, for people who want to understand anything about human existence. And if you want to understand exercise, read that book. You have to realize that the native person moved the way they did for survival. Just like the sedentary person in modern society doesn't move for survival. They don't move for survival because they're sitting at an office or studying or sitting in a classroom. That's why they're not moving, because it's not necessary, because they're born into a society that doesn't prioritize movement. It prioritizes using the brain and your hands for certain things. So we need to add in movement to be healthy, because again, for the overwhelming majority of our existence, we've lived like native and isolated people. For 200 to 300,000 years, that's what we've done. The next very important question is this. How do we add in exercise in the best way possible? And you have to realize something. Native and isolated people didn't exercise. They moved in accordance with the environment and what they needed to do to survive. I'm repeating that point because you need to realize that by adding in movement, that is exercise. Exercise itself is an invention that's only needed in modern society. The way we do it in the best way possible is by mimicking the environment we would be in normally. So this automatically means that the gym is a really, really bad place to go to. And I really want you to understand this. Because if you look at primitive and isolated people, for the most part, they did their activities outside. So what happens is when you go to a gym, you're inside. Your light viewing habits become different. You're subject to technology. You're subject to electromagnetic frequency. You're subject to not being under the sun. You're subject to moving in ways that aren't natural. And this, of course, creates lots of problems in your joints. If you do a bicep machine, but that's not calibrated to you specifically, then that's going to be a problem. While if you were to do bicep curls, that's better. But even then you have to question if bicep curls are a natural way of using your arms in the first place. Have we really done that movement to the degree to which a bodybuilder would do it? Are we really designed to do that many bicep curls, using the bicep in that way, for that amount of time, in that particular movement? Think about it from this lens, with all the movements you do, and compare it to what a human in nature would do, and you'll quickly realize that what you do in the gym is not very good for your joints. What you should do is, you should be barefoot, you shouldn't be wearing any shoes, you should ideally be in a warm place, the sun should be shining. Of course, you should be outside. You should be in a place where the air is clean, where there's nature around you, and you should do movements that are based on your body weight and on free weights. If you want to use weights, again, that's far more complicated. Even the utmost beginner in exercise can do a pull-up and not injure themselves, because I think it's impossible to injure yourself doing a pull-up unless you have a pre-existing condition. While if you give even a dumbbell to someone, they can mess up their back if they're not careful. What you're seeing me do in the video is I'm working out at a outside gym. So we have wooden gyms in Sweden, which are built here and there near residential areas, and they're completely free to go to. They're just like a park, and they're like any calisthenics park, really. You can be shirtless, you can be barefoot, you can be under the sun. There are no restrictions, really, and you can do as you please. And again, that money that people spend on the gym, which amounts to a lot in a year or several years, you can put that on organic food. Many people complain that food is expensive. Well, why don't you cancel your gym membership to spend money on something that is more important then? The main factors that would be influencing our native and isolated ancestors are present when I'm working out outside, when you're working out outside. So this outside gym solves all the problems that you would see in a gym, and it's free. So if you're going to take anything from this video, please work out outside. Don't put on any sunscreen. Don't wear too many clothes. Get sunlight on your skin, get sunlight in your eyes, but don't stare directly at the sun. And do natural movements. What if you don't have any calisthenics gyms or any wooden gyms around you? What I would recommend is something that I've done a few times, which is you go to a forest, or you go to a grassy field, or you go to a beach, and you just do exercise there. All you need to exercise is gravity and a surface. And gravity, you'll find that everywhere. And a surface, you'll find that everywhere. I mean, as long as you're not falling off a building and you're in the middle of that, then you can exercise. You don't need a gym, you don't need anything specific. Maybe I've convinced you that working out outside is the way to go. You're outside, but you don't know what to do. First, you need to look at what movements are the healthiest for human beings. And what I mean is, for a lion, they walk around, they jump, they run, they do all these things that lions do. Monkeys climb trees. That's very natural for them to do. What is it that human beings do that is very natural for them? Well, the most natural movement is walking. You can walk a certain distance every day and you'll be covered from a health standpoint. But for some people, they want other things. They want to develop other muscles. They want to be more well-rounded. So maybe doing other things could be good. What you need to realize here, though, is that since walking and running and jumping are the most natural movements for human beings, your legs are the most dominant muscle group. So if you're going to focus on any muscle group, it's going to be the legs. That's the muscle group that can take the most amount of damage and the muscle group that heals the quickest. Because if you compare the amount of work that your arms do in comparison to your legs do far more work. That's why they're far more strong. But that also means that genetically speaking, it makes sense that their muscle recovery and the amount of load they can take is far higher. And what happens when you exceed a certain limit on a muscle group is the joint takes damage. Moving up to the upper body, you may realize, if you've been to the gym and you've done working out, that if you do a lot of bench press or overhead press or pushes in general, it's far easier to get injured. While if you do a bunch of pulling, you do back exercises, you've never felt anything bad happen. That's the experience of most people, that if you bench press, you mess up your shoulders. But if you do pull-ups, the only thing you get that might be bad is you rip a callus. That tells you that in nature, we use the back and the posterior chain, the back of the body, far more than the front of the body. So, what you shouldn't do, even though it's natural, is you shouldn't do a bunch of push-ups while neglecting the back. Always do far more back exercises than push exercises, okay? Don't do a lot of push, do a lot of back. Now, I barely do any push. I mostly train my back, but when I do push, I have already done far more pull than I do push, and that balances out my upper body. Not in terms of strength, not in terms of maybe how I look, but in terms of joint health, in terms of shoulder health. Because if you do too much push, if you do too many dips, if you do too many push-ups, you're going to get shoulder issues. You're going to get bad posture. You're going to become chest dominant and your back won't be able to balance that. While no matter how little push you do, you can not do any push whatsoever. You cannot use your shoulders and your chest to press anything really. If you just do a lot of back exercises, nothing bad will happen to you. Just look at the climbers. They don't use their chest and their triceps, they just use their biceps and their back, and they don't get injuries. They get finger and hand injuries and maybe elbow pain, but they never get any shoulder pain. They don't get any spinal problems. They don't get any postural problems. So what I'm saying is, you can do as much pulling as you please. But if you do push without pull, you'll get injuries. And if you have shoulder problems, don't do any push, just do a bunch of pull. Speaking of shoulder problems, they mainly come from too much internal rotation. So, put your hand in front of you, a palm down, and now twist your thumb inwards, clockwise. Use your left arm, because that's the one I'm using. And notice how your shoulder, when you're doing this, when you're pointing your thumb downward and your palm is facing away with your left arm, your shoulder is rotating inward. Whenever you press something, whenever you push something, you're rotating your shoulder inward. Even when you punch, that's the same movement. So you're rotating your shoulder inward. Too much internal rotation is mainly what causes shoulder problems, and also lack of technique in many exercises. But we're assuming that you're not a gym bro who does a bunch of bench press. External rotation is the opposite. It's when your shoulder rotates externally. You might understand where I'm going with this. If you do a bunch of external rotation, that's certainly going to help with a problem that was caused by doing too much internal rotation. As I said before, got shoulder problems from doing the bench press. The way I remedied and fixed this problem completely, and of course today I have very good shoulders, is I stopped bench pressing, I stopped doing any presses, I stopped doing anything with internal rotation, and then I put in a bunch of external rotation, and the best external rotation exercise is face pulls. So to explain it in a very short manner, if you don't want to look it up, put a resistance exercise band somewhere, attach it to somewhere that's at the height of your head, your forehead, your shoulders, but the forehead is best, and then grab it at arm's length, and then you do the exercise by pulling the exercise band to your forehead, but you flare your elbows out. So imagine you're doing a double bicep pose, and you're at the end of the rep, and then you're extending your arms again, and then you're doing a double bicep pose, but you're holding the band, of course, and you do that a lot, and you try to go as far back with your hands and your elbows and your shoulders above your head if you want to. Then you'll get an even bigger range of motion, and you do that at very high rep ranges every day. I did 3 times 100, I believe, at a very light weight, and it works really well. Moving on to lower back pain. If you have lower back pain, you need to do reverse hyperextensions. Those are probably the best exercise for the lower back because they're training the entire posterior chain. Those muscles of the posterior chain, those are what keep you upright. And what happens to older people is they sit a lot, and that's because their muscles are weak, so they don't want to stand, they want to sit a lot. And they don't have enough power to keep their back straight when they're sitting, so their back rounds, and that degenerates the spine and the muscles in that area. So it's generally a lack of strength that causes older people to be lazy and bend their back. And because they do that so often, their back bends and becomes round, and then they've got pain and they can't straighten out the back anymore because they've been in that position for so long. So you have to train the muscles that keep you upright. So train your abdominals, but more specifically, train your lower back. So there's this guy called Louis Simmons. He's a very accomplished powerlifter who has trained many powerlifters, very, very strong, successful powerlifters. And he's filled with injuries. From what I can recall, if he lifts his arms above his head, he passes out. Louis Simmons created the reverse hyperextension machine, and keep in mind, he had very severe spinal lower back problems, and he managed to heal those just by doing this exercise. So it's a really powerful exercise, and when I had lower back problems, this helped me a lot. It's basically the exercise you're seeing on the screen. You can use a machine for it if you want to do it in a more convenient manner, but all you need is somewhere where you can grab on and have your legs swing freely. What you're doing is you're simultaneously strengthening your posterior chain, so the muscles associated with keeping you upright are going to be stronger after doing this for a while. And if you notice, at the bottom, when your feet are closest to the ground, what happens is you're pulling and stretching the lower back. So whatever bulging discs you have, whatever spinal problems you have in the area, you're straightening out the spine by doing this exercise. And even if you have lower back problems, generally speaking, you're going to be able to do this because gravity isn't really affecting your lower back. Your lower back isn't, or your spine in general, isn't really forced to take any pressure. All that's happening is you're pulling on it. Besides going from sleeping on a bed with a pillow to sleeping on the ground without a pillow, the thing that's been the best for my neck is the routine I'm showing you right here. So I do neck training, but I never do it with weights because the real purpose isn't necessarily to get a very big, strong neck. It's to have a strong neck, but also a healthy neck. Because you have to realize that when you do these exercises, you're moving blood into the area, and so you're moving nutrients into the area. And so the entire musculoskeletal system of that area is going to be nourished, strengthened, whatever you want to call it. You have to dictate where you want the nutrients to go sometimes, and in this case, this really helped. So what you do is you do neck extensions, you do neck curls, and this is something that I haven't seen anyone do, but I keep my neck stationary in the neck curl position and I move it from side to side. And this seems to work the same muscles, but in a different manner. And this exercise, I really feel like it helps. If you have problems rotating your neck from side to side and you really feel popping, this exercise is really good. I also do the same thing in the neck extension position, which is when you lay on your stomach. And then the one that I haven't seen many people do is you lay on your side and you rotate your neck upwards like I'm doing in the video. And I do 50 to 60 to 70 reps on each side. This one is really good, and you have to be really careful when you do this because you don't want to pull anything. At the end, you're going to feel like your neck has been a little bit compressed. So what I do is I decompress my neck by hanging upside down. You don't need to do what I'm doing here. I just feel like you get the best angle when you do this, but what you can do is if you just bend down like you're trying to touch your toes. Again, this depends on your mobility, but for me, I can easily touch my toes. If you just do that and you relax your neck and you let it hang, then you're going to feel maybe a little pop, maybe just a decompression, and then everything's going to be fine. I don't recommend doing neck exercises without decompressing because you don't want to walk around with a compressed neck. And likewise, if you're doing any activity vertically, so you're playing football, you're running, you're jumping, you're deadlifting if you're into that, but I highly recommend not deadlifting. If you're doing bodyweight squats, jump squats, whatever it might be that you're doing in a vertical position, hang from a bar. Of course, some people have bad grip strength. Work on that. But hanging from a bar is a very good idea because it decompresses your entire spine and it's very good for your grip strength, it's very good for your shoulders, it's very good for your posture. Those who exercise know that if you exercise, you get tighter muscles and your mobility takes a hit. So that's why you do stretching. Not necessarily because it's required for optimal health, but it's required for mobility. You're going to be less mobile if you have a very, very strong muscle. For example, if you look at Devin Lorette, the arm wrestler, he can't extend his arms, but his arms are very strong in arm wrestling, so it checks out. His body realized that he doesn't care about us being able to extend the arm, he only cares about really being strong in a certain position. And so his arm said, okay, let us remove the ability of being able to extend the arm. We don't care about that. We're going to adapt to your movement patterns. So if you lift and you show your body that you really are prioritizing muscle strength over being able to move freely through your joints, then that's going to happen. You're going to lose mobility and you're not going to be able to move in the way you should. The stretches that are best for you are very dependent on what you need. Do you play football? You might have to stretch your calves and roll them far more than I do, because I go to the outside gym and I do calisthenics. You play football. Those are very different. If you do boxing, you have a lot more internal rotation to worry about. So you need to do external rotation. You need to probably stretch your shoulders in the same external rotation position, because your chest and shoulders, especially the front deltoid, will get tight. You see? So your stretching and your mobility routine is very dependent on the movement you do. But still, this is a video and I need to recommend something, so I'm going to tell you what I do. What you're seeing on the screen is generally what I do. I always start with the hamstrings, with the legs. I don't know, I like the idea of being able to kick high, and I really like the stretch. You know, sometimes if you do a stretch, it can pull a muscle in a weird way, where it doesn't feel good to stretch. It feels like you're going to rip something apart. This stretch, more specifically, feels really good. I also do one where I stretch my glutes. I do it standing up. I put my foot somewhere high and I bend one of my legs as if I'm in a half meditation position, and that really stretches my glute. I always stretch my quads. If you have tight quads, that might lead to knee pain. If you have quad dominance, so you know when we talked about the shoulders, if you're very shoulder and chest heavy and your back is very weak, you might get messed up shoulders and a messed up posture, while if you train your back a lot, nothing's going to happen. And if you have that problem and you do external rotation, it's going to fix the problem. It's the same with your knees. If you have problems with your knees, the same principle applies to your knees. So you need to train the back of the leg, so the hamstring, far more than you train the quads. If you have knee pain, I highly recommend doing hamstring curls in the way I'm doing right here. Very light, high rep, very easy to do. You can do it anywhere. You just need gravity and a surface. And this is probably one of the best exercises I've ever found for knee health. It's very, very good, and I highly recommend it. As for stretching the upper body, and especially the spine and the shoulders, the arms, even the abdominals, and especially the back, the best I've ever found is ring stretches. So you don't have to be in the position that I'm in right here. You can move around as much as you want. You can flip over, you can spin around. Now let's talk about exercise frequency and volume. Small workouts every day are far better. Why? Because if you go to an outside gym for 20 minutes, when you're out on a walk and you do the workout and then you continue the walk and then you go home, then you're getting fresh air and you're getting movement every day, which is what you need to do. You eat every day, you're in the sun every day, hopefully, you ground every day, you sleep every day, and you need movement every day. Constricting movement to 3 times a week or once per week just because it's 2 hours of a very intense workout, I feel like that's not very smart, because movement in itself is a health requirement. So that's the case for very frequent and small workouts. Again, what you saw here, I was probably in this outside gym for like 30 minutes, not more. Usually I just spend 30 minutes there. Now I realize that you might be a gym addict and you will not quit the gym even though you've watched and comprehended this video. You might be thinking about it, but you can't do it yet. Let me tell you a few things. Go to the gym in the morning, because the blue light will absolutely fry your circadian rhythm. And even if you go in the morning, it's still bad. Don't wear any brain-frying radio frequency AirPods. Don't wear your phone on you. Don't listen to any music. Just focus on the workout. And when you're working out, please, for the love of God, don't use machines, and all the lifts you do with a barbell or dumbbells, please research all the lifts thoroughly so that you understand them. Benching, squatting, and deadlifting, they're very, very complex movements, and if you don't understand that they're complex, that's because you don't know how to do them correctly. I have a free PDF called the 10 Dietary Rules. I also have a book called the 6 Health Commandments. Go check them out if you're interested in them, if you like the way I teach health. And with that said, go and achieve excellent health. I know you can do it.